Hi everyone, welcome to our fifth teach-in. Okay, so let me just get this up and running. Welcome. I hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving weekend. Hope you got to rest and relax. If you had to work over the weekend, thank you from all of us for doing so. If you had a tough time family-wise or were lonely, I'm glad it's beyond us and we're all together now tonight. So again, this is our fifth teach-in. As always, we start off with Georgia. And you can see down my feed one post that there's huge long waiting lines, 2 hours long, which is sad that it's come to this. On the other hand, it's wonderful news that we can say we're showing up, because early voting is usually our folks showing up to vote. I want to thank all the voters who are spending their time on the weekend to make sure they vote for democracy and that we re-elect Senator Warnock. I just want to highlight again how important this seat is. As many of you know who have been following me, the Senate has been my main focus, will continue to be my main focus. The Senate is where we pass through appointees for the Supreme Court, and we see how important that is. And with a 51st seat, there's a lot of maneuverability that can come. It will get us a committee chair, but it will also stack the committees in our favor. It will make either Manchin or Sinema irrelevant. So again, if you have time this week, and you have friends from high school, from, I don't know, from wherever, from some event you met them at, that live in Georgia, please text them or email them and make sure they're voting. Okay, so that's my little 2 cents on Georgia, and I love my new Vote Warnock hat. You'll be seeing that a lot this week. So we're gonna do something a little different this week. I was actually looking for a whiteboard and to channel my inner Katie Porter. And I did have a whiteboard that I used to use when I coached basketball, but unfortunately I seem to have thrown it away. So we're gonna do a little bit, like, I know you guys don't love when I'm not looking straight at the feed, but we'll do my best. I'm gonna do a little bit of Katie Porter this way, because we're gonna go through some numbers, okay? Because to me, we've been talking about, again, just backing up from the beginning to review what we've talked about in the first 4 podcast related, Facebook Lives related to Musk Twitter. There's 2 areas that I believe will end to his demise here. One is the technology. It's already getting glitchy. It's funny how you get like out of habits and in habits. I mean, for me, Twitter was such a big part of my life. I had a huge following, close to 600,000 followers there. It was my most active platform. And I was one of the first to get off about 3.5 weeks ago. And it's amazing how you adapt. And now I get news other places, and it's totally fine. And my quality of life, I have to say, is a lot better. I mean, maybe because I had a huge following, but I would get attacked daily there. It was a cesspool. It really, even before Musk, and then once he got there, had gotten so much worse, that quality of life wise. But anyway, so now and then I'll just pop in just to see what's going on. And the thing that I find most interesting, if you look at trends and then you try to click on the trend and you want to see all the stories related to it, before he owned it, it would pretty much go straight to, you'd automatically have a list of all the main tweets related to that particular trending topic. Then I noticed like a week or 2 after that, there's a little spinning wheel up top, and the little spinning wheel, I don't know if others have noticed this, would go about halfway before the top tweets would show up. Then I started to know the little spinning wheel was there longer. Like last week, it was there for like 3/4 of a spin. And now I'm noticing at some points when, like today, I just popped over there, pulled up the trends, pulled up trend number 3. It took me a full spin of that little wheel. So we've talked about technology and how the engineers who have left, and again, as we discussed in the last Facebook Live, there were 7,500 employees originally. We're now at roughly 2,300 employees. He fired additional engineers, which we're going to talk about. Entire engineering divisions are gone. So this platform is very susceptible. And that's one area we've talked about technology. The second area we talked about was finance. And we're going to spend a lot of time on finance today. And if I get too technical, I'm a math nerd, just letting you all know up front. But I'm going to try to be as for those of you who, the 99% of you who haven't taken finance or worked on Wall Street, I'm going to try to make it as basic as I can. I'm going to go through it with my Katie Porter folder since I don't have a board. We're going to draw it out together. And then I'm going to pause and take a couple of questions before we go into all the developments since we met last on Tuesday. It's only 5 days, but so much happens, even on slow weeks. And that's by design. So the thing that alarmed me most about Musk when he took over was his authoritarian traits. And it really, for me, is triggering. So a lot of you have asked why Musk, in addition to Twitter and its importance for many of us and for the world in a lot of variety of ways that we can go on and discuss. But I had this instinctual feel about him the way I did about Trump when he took office. And the way, you'll remember when Trump took office, all of a sudden he would throw out these shiny coins. Look here, look here, look there, look there. And he would say, oh, well, what do you all think about this or that? But not really listen to anyone. It wasn't really about asking our opinion. It was about showing us that he had all the power. Remember that with Trump? And then when things didn't go quite as planned and it was kind of looking like we could see how incompetent he was, then it was the transgender military ban one week, or it would be the immigrants at the border, whatever it was to change the subject. And if you've noticed this week, we're going to talk about this. Elon Musk is doing that too. Because it is my belief, and we're going to talk about it at the end because a lot of you ask, what is he up to? What is the grand plan? There is no grand plan. The emperor has no clothes. And when this all falls apart, he's at risk for that being exposed. Okay, so before we get into finance, one more thing from the last time we got together. We said there were 3 red flags to watch for. All right, so we have the 2 areas that could go wrong, technology and finance meaning going into bankruptcy. And then we have 3 red flags that I told you to keep an eye on. One is that he was slowing payments to vendors. We're going to talk about finance next. Not paying vendors. I mean, a lot of you said, oh, that sounds familiar, Donald Trump. Yes, it does sound familiar. And it might have been a strategy. And as I mentioned last time, if he had bought, for example, a company that manufactured, say, washing machines. I'm just going to make it basic in finance. Sometimes you push off vendors until you sell the washing machines and then you get the money so you can pay off the vendors. But there's no money coming in from pushing off the vendors. He's pushing them off because they're cash shortages, which we talked about last time. He was trying to fund by selling Tesla stock, sold $4 billion of Tesla stock after the purchase. Okay, so that's the first red flag, these pushing off vendor payments. Never a good sign. If you've worked on Wall Street, huge red flag. The second, also related to finance, is the threat of Apple and Google. And we had talked about last time that the head of Apple Apps had deleted his account entirely, deactivated his account on Twitter. And what does that mean? And I don't know if the journalists are watching this. They used to quote me all the time on Twitter. I don't know if they're watching it, but sure enough, the next day, CNBC top story, any of you, I posted it, was what are Apple and Google going to do with Elon's Twitter? So that's news. It's big news because after January 6th, Apple and Google both went to these new social media apps after Trump was kicked off Twitter, like Parler and the other far-right groups that were saying free speech, no moderation, and said, that's fine, we're taking you off our app. Can't get on Parler, remember that? And Parler had to go and negotiate with Apple and go and negotiate with Google to come to terms and say, we will moderate. The same thing happened, the same story. Literally the day after we spoke on Wednesday, it was on CNBC. And then by Friday, the man-child was tweeting, because he saw the story and is feeling threatened, that he's going to start and manufacture a cell phone. Oh, yeah, I'm sure that's going to work really well. I mean, he makes these idle threats. It's like Trump with the shiny coins. Remember we talked about the shiny coins? It's a shiny coin. This man cannot make, and let him go dig up and try to get some manufacturing going for cell phones. Apple can't even find chips. I'm sure he'll be really good at that. And I'm sure the Tesla stock, where like his entire net worth is tied up, if he were to decide, oh, I have a new side project, I'm going to be a cell phone manufacturer. Imagine Tesla stock is at a 2-year low. Imagine what would happen then. So again, idle threat, shiny coin. Again, a la Trump, a la Putin. They just do these things, say these grandiose statements as threats to try to change the subject. The third red flag, as we talked about last time, were the regulators, especially abroad, but here as well. And when we spoke last, the French regulatory agency was asking for information from Musk Twitter. And I don't know the status of that, but we have more to report on that red flag in this Facebook Live. Okay, but first, we're going to go through finance. And finance is really dire for him. And very few people understand this or are talking about this, because people that are writing mostly don't have any financial degree, and the people on the Wall Street Journal are writing about this somewhat. So people there are seeing a little bit about finance, but they're not really, other than saying he's at risk for going bankrupt. They're stopping there. But I'm going to kind of go through the numbers here. And okay, so first we're going to start, and I'm sorry, we're going to have to just do it this way. When Musk bought the company, all right, and you can write this down. If this doesn't work next time, I'll just have you write it all down. I just thought it would be helpful to do it this way. When Musk bought the company, the annualized revenue of Twitter, that means for an entire year, was $5.1 billion. Okay, for the last year. Before he bought it, it was a public company. So they had to report their numbers, and they're all publicly available. So for the year 2021, the revenue was $5.1 billion. When he bought it, by the time he bought it, there were 2 quarters into 2022. The last quarter that was publicly reported was the quarter ended June 30th, 2022. At that point, in that one quarter, revenue had already fallen at Twitter. Revenue was $1.2 billion for one quarter. So we have 4 quarters in a year. So multiply that by 4. So the revenue when he closed, okay, roughly, he closed in October, but in June 2022, the run rate was $4.8 billion. Okay, now, before he bought it, the company, when they had $5.1 billion, did they make money or lose money? They lost money. Even with that much in revenue, and I'm going to spell out million versus billion, and you all know there's 1,000 millions and a billion. But for 2021, this is 2021, Twitter lost net loss of 221 million. Okay. Also, before he bought it, of that 5.1 billion, we're on the pre side, 4.5 billion out of the 5.1 was advertisement revenue. Ah, you say, advertisement revenue. We've been reading about advertisement revenue this week. So that was ads, and then there was another 0.6 billion of licenses and other services. Okay, so this is before Musk. Okay. Now notice he's lost money. Before Musk bought it, this company Twitter had 600 million of debt, or 0.6 billion. Small, very, very little debt. And they paid interest of 23 million, not billion, 23 million, small interest. Okay, so this is 2021, pre-Elon. Company is losing money, and they're losing money even though they only have to pay 23 million of interest on their bank debt, because they have a very, very small amount of debt. Very, very small. But they're still losing money because there's all sorts of other costs to run a business. Now we get back to this side. Okay, so this is post. Okay, so remember this 4.5 billion? That's how much in 2021 they made in ads. And what did we learn from Media Matters this week? Well, out of that 4.5 billion, he's already lost 50 of the top 100 accounts. So out of the 4.5 billion, we now have lost 750 million already. Okay? Already. And according to Media Matters, in addition to the 50 of 100 advertisers who have already left, another 7 have said they've already slowed. And that's another 255 million. These are million. 255 million plus 750 million. So roughly a billion. This is roughly 1 billion. So already the revenue side here has gone down by an entire billion. We were at 4.8. We are now at roughly 3.8 billion of revenue. Roughly. Okay. Remember here, when we were at happier number, 5.1 million, we were already losing money. And we had almost no interest expense. Now, how did he finance this purchase? He used 13 billion of bank loans. So we went from 600 million to 13 billion of bank loans. Sorry about my number here. 13 billion of bank loans. Again, 600 million to 13 billion. Why is that important? Because you have to pay interest. The banks were forced to close. They had agreed to finance this deal in April when the company was worth about 44 billion. At the time Musk closed the deal, he was made to close the deal. He tried to walk. Let's remember that. For all those people with your grand scheme stuff, this man tried to walk. The courts were going to enforce it. The banks were forced to close on this 13 billion of bank loans. Reporting by the Wall Street Journal indicates that even before he closed, the banks were stuck with this loan. Usually what happens is a deal closes, you syndicate it. If you're 13 billion held by 6 banks, every bank, say, has 2 billion, they sell down till they get to 100 million or whatever it is. They were stuck with it. And if they wanted to sell it at that point, collectively, they would have taken a $500 million loss. The reason why it was already worth less than 13 billion. Okay, but going back, this 13 billion, as opposed to the 600 million, costs a lot of money. First of all, bank loans are floating rates. So if interest rates, like your home or your car, if interest rates go up, bank loans are floating rate. So the cost of that debt has gone up as interest rates grow up. Roughly where we sit today, each year on an annualized basis, he has to pay, 1 billion of interest. 1 billion. So we're down to 3.8 billion of revenue. You got to cut 1 billion off the top just to wake up in the morning and pay off your loans. This company is bleeding cash. I want to say one other thing, and then I'm going to stop and take a couple of questions because I know this is really complicated. this is where we sit today. Now, say $1 billion of this revenue, of ad revenue, is gone according to Media Matters. Media Matters is also, what they're doing is they're calling, or they're looking at the revenues. They're calling the advertisers and trying to get them to stop advertising. But, I checked with other sources as well. There's another source that the Wall Street Journal had quoted called Insider Intelligence, and they were cutting what they expected ad sales to be from Twitter by 40% through 2024. Meaning, if they were making $4.5 billion in revenue, cut that down by 40%. So this company, revenue is like money coming in the door to pay your bills. It's like for those of you who go to work and get paid once a week or twice a week, when your check comes in, that's your revenue. And that's what you use to say, okay, this week I got to pay the electric bill, I got to pay my rent, I've got to pay interest on my car loan. Okay, so now your car loan has gone from 600 million to 13 billion and 1 billion of debt. Now you got to pay your car loan is like so expensive. Where's the money left over to pay the rest? Which is why two things happen. Which is why remember the first red flag, pushed off payments to vendors, but it's also secondarily why he had to sell. Remember I talked 2 weeks ago about how suddenly he sold 4 billion of Tesla stock, and Tesla stock had been coming down and no one knew why, because he had been dumping his shares for liquidity, to deal with short-term liquidity, to pay for these things. Now, what are the hopes for making things better? How do we get back to the 5.1 billion? And I just want to say, overall, Twitter, before he took it over, had only made money 2 of the last 10 years. And things were getting better, like losing 221 million, still losing money, was better than it had been the year before, but it's still a money-losing company. So you take a money-losing company, you cut off 1 billion of the revenue, you add on 1 billion of interest payment. What makes things better? You need to have revenue from somewhere. The banks aren't going to loan you more money. The bank debt itself is trading below par. It's underwater. Moody's, as of November 18th, stopped rating this company. So there's no more access to the capital markets at this point. There's no access, period, even without Moody's rating it or what. So Musk says the solution is, first it was a solution, then it got pulled, is these subscriptions where you're going to pay $8 a month. Now, all of that is at risk because Apple and Google could cut that off at any time. But say he moves forward with it. When he did move forward with it last, the data, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times reported on this. Of the accounts that got verified, the average size was 500 followers. A lot of them were bots and trolls that bought the accounts, mimicked Eli Lilly, impersonated Jimmy Fallon and said he was dead, impersonated politicians, etc., etc. People were largely not using this for good. Out of the people that were verified, and it was 140,000 people had signed up for that service. It's $8. You got to pay your cut to Apple and Google. So say he's going to net $7, right? Roughly $7 times, he had sold, according to the New York Times, 140,000. That's not a lot of money. That's about $1 million a month. 12 million. We're not even getting into like the same zip code as these billions of dollars you're down. Even if he sold 1 million verified accounts and was making 7 million a month, that's 7 times 12, 96 million. That's not going to pay the bills. This doesn't even make a crack in this stuff. This company is in financial trouble. Okay, so before we get to the rest of the news and the developments, I'm going to stop here, as I promised. I'm going to pause. If you have questions about what we've talked about so far on the financial side, Post them as comments, and I'll address a couple before we keep going. How does a Saudi investment play into this? Okay, we got some additional information that I talked about in our last time together. So the capital structure, sorry, I'm running out of paper. Now we're going to switch to paper. The capital structure, he paid $44 billion. Okay, we knew that. We knew that he got $13 billion of bank loans. So he needed to finance another $31 billion. What we learned and we discussed last time before Thanksgiving was out of that 31, 27 billion is still held by Musk. 27 billion. The other 4 billion that we know of, the Saudi crown prince who had invested in Twitter stock rolled roughly $1 billion of that over, maybe $1.5 billion is part of this 4 billion. Jack Dorsey rolled his Twitter stock over. He's part of this 4 billion. We don't know for sure if Larry Ellison from Oracle might be part of this, and we don't know where the rest is. But I don't know this number for fact because this is not public information. But according to the Wall Street Journal, and again, they're just eyeballing because this is not public, they're estimating that 27 billion of the 44 billion was paid by Musk. And some of you have seen me say he's on the hook for 31 billion in total. The reason is, in addition to this 27 billion, remember I said he sold Tesla stock to keep the company afloat? So you add on another 4 billion, he is in the hole for 31 billion, Musk alone, on this investment. So that's what we know about the Saudis. We don't know for sure that he owns 27 billion, but according to the journal, and the other 4 billion, we don't know who all the holders are. Oh, it's backwards. The computer's flipping it. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know how to address that. Sorry, maybe you can just look at it more slowly. No, I do not think there are autocratic leaders paying him to do anything. We're going to discuss that at the end when we talk about intent. But I just want to go through if other people have questions about finances. I'm sorry, this is my first time doing it. You're right. Maybe, I'll take a picture of it and post it as a picture in the comments after so you can all look at it. I apologize. I didn't think of that. Holding my iPhone. Any other questions? I will never understand why investment banks. Okay, so to answer your question, why did the banks agree to finance this? At the time the banks agreed to finance this, it was April. We were in a totally different world. It was before the stock market had traded off. The stock for Tesla was trading at roughly $44. He bid a discount, but he bid equivalent to $54 a share, $54.20, because he's being so cutesy. At that time, that valuation for the company was high enough that the board said, hit the bid, sell it. But it was certainly plenty to cover the banks. Then he, for the next months, tries to walk from the deal, but he has signed to buy this company. And then in the meantime, the stock market and technology craters. So at the time he closes this deal in October, and he's forced to close this deal, the bank loans are worth less than 13 billion, even though the banks are forced to fund. The company is worth in total roughly 20 to 25 billion instead of him paying 44 billion. So anyone that thinks this guy is a genius with intent, I need to say that again. At closing, he paid 44 billion for a company literally worth half of that. That's like walking into a car dealership and you see a Ford that's $30,000 on the lot and you say, no problem, I'll pay you $60,000 for that Ford. That's how stupid this purchase is. So anyone who said he has these big intentions, no, this was just him sticking his neck out and getting caught. And the banks had no choice, just like he had no choice. They had agreed to fund it. Now the banks most likely, when the deal was originally done, have collateral of Tesla stock, which I talked about last time, which can mean if this investment goes north, if Twitter is worth less than 13 billion, and they do, again, it's not public information, it was just reporting beforehand, they can liquidate their Tesla stock. So the banks likely will be fine. But yes, this company is worth a lot less. But the person eating that is him and his other investors. Yes, everyone should know he didn't start Tesla and SpaceX. Okay, thank you. I'll know for next time that it's backwards. Well, I'll figure out another alternative. Does anyone have any, yeah, most of the banks, yeah, but you weren't born with a dad who owned an emerald mine and you weren't born a billionaire. That's a difference between the two of you. Why would banks agree to pay over what the company's worth? Well, again, the banks are only 13 billion. They're 13 and they come first in line. These banks need to get paid 13 billion back before any of this is worth a single penny. So if this company goes bankrupt and the company is worth 15 billion, the banks will get back their 13 billion and these guys who will have to squat up the other 2 billion and split it. If they go bankrupt and this company is worth less than 13 billion, the banks will effectively become the owners and they will sell the company and get whatever they can get. As I've said before, I am telling you, as someone who worked in finance, Musk's phone is ringing with people offering to buy Twitter, and they are offering him somewhere in the range of 10 to 20 billion after he paid 44 billion. And with those offers, he still needs to pay off the bank loans before he keeps a cent. But believe me when I say financial investors will smell blood in the water on this. This company is worth somewhere in the range of 10 to 20 billion, given what he's done to the revenue. It is not sustainable as it is. Okay. Will the bank loan have to be paid out of his personal funds if Twitter doesn't have it? If this company goes bankrupt and is worth less than 13 billion, I believe, again, based on old reporting, that the banks have as collateral Tesla stock. So what they would do is and that's potentially another reason Tesla stock has been trading down, the banks would dump their shares to get paid back. You know, sometimes if you get a loan that you have to put up collateral of some type, I believe he had to put up collateral, and that's what the banks would do to get their money back. It's not, I'll offer $44. You might own it. The vultures are circling. So just as background, I was my Wall Street background is trading distressed debt. So this is my expertise. Who the vultures are, it could be anybody that can bring in a smart operator. His problem is he's just coming in and exploding it. I thought the most interesting comment that he had made is when Stephen King was trolling him and said, soon the only advertising left he'll have is the My Pillow guy. And Elon's response was, what do you suggest? And I was like, you're asking Stephen King, an author, what he would suggest to make money? The answer is this company needs to be recapitalized a lot lower. This company ultimately is a company that can make like 5 billion. And if it's better managed and has a small debt load, there's a level at which this company can make money and grow. And Twitter was improving, just not quickly enough. But it can't survive with $1 billion of interest a year from the banks. Okay, so unless we have any other questions, what I'm going to do is keep going. We've covered the financial stuff. We're going to talk about the other developments that have happened since we spoke last. Let's make some notes for myself. And then at the end, we'll go back. And if you have any other questions, we will take them at that point. Okay, so we spoke last on Tuesday. That was our last Facebook Live. Then Wednesday was Thanksgiving Eve. I'm just going to call it just like Christmas Eve, the night before Thanksgiving. And even though we had said in that last Facebook Live already, Twitter was down from 7,500 employees, cutting half all at once to 3,750, and then cutting more. They were down to roughly, according to the media, around 2,300 employees. And Musk had told them on Monday, we're done with firing. We're hiring now. We're done with firing. And so then we read the story. That wasn't actually the truth. Lo and behold, Elon didn't tell the truth again. How often has that happened? Like, who does this remind you of? According to reporting, on Wednesday night, he fired dozens of more engineers and gave them 1 month severance. So imagine you're fired the night before Thanksgiving, and then you're given severance that effectively runs out on December 24th. Like, this guy's, you know what? The richest man doing this. I'm sure those dozens of engineers, he just needed to save that cash as opposed to all the advertisers. Also, since we spoke last, we've come to learn that he's lost roughly 50 of the largest 100 advertising companies. And that's roughly 750 million, or roughly $1 billion, including others that are following. And this is before another major development when we spoke last week. And that is, it's Ollie income free on Musk Twitter. He has made this other pronouncement. The other shiny coin is, not only is Trump allowed back and Marjorie Taylor Greene and all the other, nut jobs, every account that's been suspended, with the exception of maybe Alex Jones, is being allowed back. So if this was a hellscape before, and I'm not on anymore, so I don't look. If people are sending me hate shit, I'm sure they are. But people who are still there that are like tweeting are saying like the level of trolling and MAGA crap is like nothing you've ever seen before. So I don't know why they're still on there doing it. To each his own. I have my own opinions on it. Okay. So those things have happened. Also, while the media was kind of asleep and off on vacation, well needed for Thanksgiving, he closed his Brussels office. Why does that matter? Brussels is a regulatory hub for companies like Twitter. He fired the staff, completely closed the office. Remember in the open, we talked about the fact that the French regulators are waiting for an answer for him as to what he plans to do on moderation. We had spoken last time about how the German regulators as well are waiting a response. Now he just cut out Brussels, which is the entree to the EU. So now, in addition to like these other specs across across the world that are shutting down, where he's fired, he fired a woman who was head of like content moderation and policy for the Middle East and parts of Africa. I mean, he's just like gutting anything to do with content moderation or policy, which are the people that interact with these regulators. He fired the person in Ireland, and she actually said, you know what, I don't accept that. And the court in Ireland has stayed her firing. But all of this has happened since we spoke last time. So this is, excuse my French, a shit show. And these countries can at some point just say, lights out. You are not operating in France. You are not operating in Germany. And even though, we are in America and we think this is an American investor and we're very American centric, only 25% of Twitter users are in the United States. 75% are not. So that has real ramifications. That was one of our 3 red flags. Also, just noteworthy, I'm just going to asterisk this. There's not a lot of news that got reported, but the first politician took her account off of Twitter. The St. Louis mayor, big city, she's off. Others have not followed yet. Again, we had spoken at one point, CBS News took off their account, came back. He acted like a child and taunted them like he does with everybody else because this man seemingly has nothing better to do than to troll people on Twitter. But things are like there's these cracks in the foundation, and we're only like less than a month into his ownership. So those were the major happenings. Now, I just want to close out with one more item, and then I'm going to take your questions. And that is, a lot of you have said, I read somewhere, he had a grand plan for this, he had a grand plan to do this, he had a grand plan, I have to tell you, I don't see it. At this point where we sit today, Elon Musk is out $31 billion. I as well had posted during this last week that because of Tesla stock falling, and most of his personal net worth is tied up in Tesla, his personal net worth is down 100 billion so far this year. He stands to lose another 31 billion from his investment in Twitter. And I don't see it. Here's what I think happened. And again, it's like trying to understand Trump when I was documenting Trump for 4 years. People who are rich sometimes are given the benefit of the doubt, is my nice way of saying it. You know, some of you have sent me stuff similar to Trump saying he went to UPenn. Elon Musk claims he had degrees from UPenn and other places, sorry UPenn, that don't check out. He claimed he has a degree in physics, doesn't check out. He's similar to Trump, was born with a silver spoon. He was born a billionaire. His dad owned an emerald mine in apartheid land. So he was able to make investments in Tesla and SpaceX. These were not his ideas. He came in. Sometimes being rich gets you to the front of the line. I'm not gonna, I don't have an opinion on those two companies. I have an opinion on Twitter and what he's done there. And it reminds me again, when Trump took office, it reminds me when Putin, decided that he was going to invade Ukraine because they were mean to him or whatever. This just seems like people were mean to Elon Musk on Twitter. He felt bullied. He felt like he didn't have a voice. So just like he said, I'm going to buy Parler, he said, I'm going to buy Twitter. And then the whole thing went to shit because the market changed, and the company he was paying $44 billion for was worth like half of that when he closed. So again, it's like going in to say, oh, I'm at the dealership for Ford and I see a Ford car, the sticker price is $30,000. Will you take $60,000? That's what he just did in buying Twitter. So I don't think this man has a brilliant plan. I do believe, and this is not my area of expertise. My areas of expertise are authoritarianism and finance. But I've heard interviews of individuals who are experts on what other countries might have in store. And like a former CIA official who spoke this week, who said, of course, Russia is loving this because they can put their propaganda on Twitter about their invasion of Ukraine. And there's no one moderating. And the moderation is down, so they can get away with a lot more. So does it help other dictators? Absolutely. Did he do this with that in mind? I don't believe so. I see zero evidence of that. He's about to lose tens of billions of dollars. So I see no evidence of this. This company it doesn't have any new ideas. It's not growing. There's nothing revolutionary. It's floundering and hemorrhaging cash. So with that, I'm going to take any questions, and the way I'm going to see your questions is you write a comment and I will see them, and I'll try to answer some before we call it a night. What will this do to Tesla long term? Why aren't shareholders screaming foul and giving him the boot? There's been a lot of talk, and stuff written about Tesla. Shareholders complaining to the board of directors about him devoting his time to Twitter. That's something that the board of directors would have to decide. There's a lot of speculation that this company could have reached the bottom. A lot of others are speculating that the whole thing that held Tesla's value together was the notion of him pushing it all the time on Twitter and other places, having these grandiose stories that didn't pan out, but him having the stories to tell. And because he doesn't have a growth story to tell right now, it's just people trying to pick a bottom and bottom fish. The other risk that you start to see, you start to see some celebrities saying they are selling their Teslas. I have to say, I went to a few holiday parties in the last few days, and granted, people know I'm following this situation, but people came up and quietly said over drinks, my husband is thinking about selling his Tesla, or I'm thinking about selling my Tesla. So yeah, his other brands will get hurt, and it hurts Tesla, but I am not making a stock call on the stock. But he's doing things to hurt it. What are the possible legal impacts with regulation? So the US doesn't really have regulation. The one thing that the US does have relating to this is they have a settlement with Twitter before Musk bought it with the FTC, that each quarter Twitter needs to report that they are monitoring issues relating to privacy. It was part of a settlement. Facebook has something similar, where they have to make sure that they are moderating, maintaining our privacy, because there were leaks of our privacy. So what happened, and we talked about this about 2 weeks ago in one of the old Facebook Lives, literally the day before, the individuals at Twitter, the new Twitter under Musk, would have to sign their names to agree that they were in compliance. They all quit. So I don't know where that stands with the FTC. I don't know if the FTC just punted on it or gave them time to report, or if somebody else signed off, one of his cronies, on these reports and therefore is liable. But I know that people within Twitter that used to do it didn't want to be liable and resigned. That was well reported. I checked out used car market recently and was shocked at the number of used Teslas for sale. Yes, not good. Yes, Alyssa Milano is one of the celebrities who said that she got rid of hers. Whatever. I don't own a Tesla. I wouldn't buy it because of him. But anyway. Is the future of Tesla at stake? Separate issue completely, but although they're tied together, the value of Tesla stock is at stake with what he's doing here clearly. But the only way it would really get hurt is by him reputationally harming it. And that's just, very much on the edges. It's very anecdotal at this point. That's the least of his worries. His worries are this, and again, I'm going to post it the right way, but this $1 billion of interest he has to pay. Does anyone else have any questions? If not, we can call it a night until new developments. I'm sure there'll be a lot of developments now that the media is back. It's been kind of, it got really busy and then kind of quiet the last few days, and him just throwing out his idle threats, shiny coins. Changing to authoritarianism, Trump, DeSantis, Pence, all will be putting their hats in the ring for president. How do we see these authoritarian types doing? I think Trump is the biggest risk. I personally believe DeSantis will flame out, that the Republicans will bring him down. It's very rare since I've been following politics that the, really cool guy or woman 2 years before ends up being the party nominee. It's just they're a clean slate now, and DeSantis isn't being attacked. But once they start attacking him, then it's going to be trouble for him. I don't think Pence is a worry as relates to authoritarianism. I agree with him on nothing. I'm gay, and he's a bigot against gay people, but I don't think he's a threat that way. I think he's just sort of a standard Republican that I agree with on nothing. Any other questions? If not, folks, good night. I am going to post, has Musk hit the pain threshold for his financial loss yet? It's not going to be that. It's going to be, he's probably at a point where he needs to sell more Tesla shares, or sell the company, sell Twitter to somebody at a loss, or have the company go bankrupt. He's going to run out of cash if they're not getting paid for advertisement. So that will be what will do him in. These subscriptions are not going to be fast enough or for enough money to sustain this company. So I'm going to post this, and I will look forward. Thank you all for your time, and we'll see you again when there's a lot of developments to discuss. Have a good evening. Good back to work week.